In today's video, I'm sharing with you my favorite comic book pickups of 2024. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome to the channel. My name is John, and you're watching Old Stuff is Cool. Now this channel is only roughly about 2 months old, but you know what? This is a great chance to get to know one another better, kind of what I'm into as far as collecting, and hopefully by sharing more of my journey, you'll get to know me better as a comic fan and collector. Now this is a combination of big boy books or high price books, as well as significant books for me this year. So to kick things off, we have Ultimate Spider-Man #1. And this is one that I hunted around for. My local comic shops were already sold out, so I was on the hunt, and it was kind of reinvigorating this old feeling that I hadn't had in years hunting comics. And wouldn't you know it, we took a family trip up to Salem, Massachusetts, went to Harrison's Comics, a fantastic store. In hindsight, I wish I went with the standard cover. I mean, yes, because it holds value better, but as far as what was available, this variant kind of drew my eye. I was just ecstatic that I was able to find a copy, and wouldn't you know it, getting into this series led to me opening a pull list back at my local comic store, and eventually led me down the path of back issues, which we'll get into more just a little bit. One more comic that came out this year I wanted to share with you. It is Spider-Gwen Ghost Spider #1. This is the Jenny Frison variant. Guys, let me tell you, I was never into the whole variant thing. When I stopped collecting comics, modern comics, variants it was kind of a thing. The incentive, 1 in 100, 1 in 25, that whole thing didn't really explode quite yet. It's also a rabbit hole that I'm very wary of because I'm very much an all or nothing kind of person. So I think I have to be very choosy what variants I go for. And I think it was a post on Instagram or something where I saw the art of Jenny Frison. I'm really not wanting to get into incentive covers or even special versions without the trade dress. I'm just happy getting a cover that features my favorite artists. So I have picked up more variants in addition to the standard versions this year, but that's something where I am, again, treading very carefully on moving forward. So it's part art appreciation, it's part thrill of the hunt. That's where my variant journey is so far. It's still very new. It's something I didn't do before, and I had to feature it because this is a significant new part of my collecting journey. All right, so for the rest of the books on my list today, we are squarely in the back issue, more vintage part of comic books. So next I want to talk about is Moon Knight #1 with a beautiful and classic cover by Bill Sienkiewicz. Now, I was lucky that when I got into tracking down back issues, when I wanted to get this book in particular, the hype for Moon Knight and the Disney Plus series had largely died down. This copy is a mid-grade copy, but very presentable. And you know what? I only recently discovered how much I love Moon Knight despite really enjoying the Warren Ellis run, the Jeff Lemire run, Brian Michael Bendis' run, and the current Jed MacKay run. So he's really become a prominent figure that I didn't have much attachment for in my younger days. So I'm not sure how deep down the rabbit hole I want to go as far as this character goes and back issues. There are plenty of other great Bill Sienkiewicz covers, which I've had my eye on. Currently, I'm not going after a complete run or anything like that, but I am heavily considering getting either the Omnibus or the Epic Collection because I'm very much a comic reader too, and I kind of like the unhinged vigilante escapades of Moon Knight. So I'm curious how this character will play a role in my comic collecting journey moving forward. Now, it's no surprise how much nostalgia plays in our hobby in comic book collecting, and that's very much the case for this next book. It is one that I always wanted in my early days of collecting, and that is New Mutants 87, featuring the first appearance of Cable, aka Nathan Summers. So Cable was bigger than Deadpool, and nowadays that's very much flip-flopped. New Mutants #98 is the book that one day, it's not high priority, but I would like to own it one day. Maybe if I pick up a collection in the future or something, but not willing to shell out, a couple $100s for it. But sub $100 was this book here, and you could probably make a really good argument that Cable embodied the 90s. He embodied a lot of the Image Comics early creations from Rob Liefeld, from other creators, having pouches upon pouches, having all the guns, all the weapons, having glowy eye, all that thing I think started off with Cable here in New Mutants. He was very much the it character of the time, along with like Wolverine and Ghost Rider, a lot of those edgy superheroes. So this is total nostalgia buy, but hey, that's what drives a lot of our collecting. It's what drives a lot of my collecting. So in that same vein of Image Comics 90s hot artists, we gotta talk about Todd McFarlane, and he predates Rob Liefeld by a little bit, but very much so in the same conversation. We got some Todd McFarlane goodness here with Amazing Spider-Man number 328. I've always loved this cover featuring the Grey Hulk. This is also Todd McFarlane's last issue of ASM, so there's significance there. But really, I just always wanted to own this comic, plain and simple. And Spider-Man and X-Men are really, my home base. It's my comfort food as far as comics go. So I had to at least feature one of the Amazing Spider-Man comics I picked up this year. And this was it. And in sticking with Spider-Man for just a little bit longer, we have the original Ultimate Spider-Man number 1 right here with Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Bagley. Absolutely love this series. Kind of like with the modern version of Ultimate Spider-Man, this is what got me into comics after a short break, after I started up college, but this pulled me back in. Rather, a web comic version of this, which Marvel offered free, I think the first 4 issues, possibly more, gave me exposure to this book, which then led me to pick up the trade, and then got hooked on the series. But I was missing issues number 1 through 8 of my Ultimate Spider-Man run, and I put it on my list of goals to finish that out. So picking up number 1 from my boy Space Lounge Comics over on Whatnot. This is a mid-grade version, but I have no problem with mid-grade. I could always upgrade it down the road, but I think it presents fairly well. And honestly, it's just great to have a copy finally in the collection. So Ultimate Spider-Man number 1, first time around. All right, we're about halfway through the stack I want to share with you guys today. And moving right along, we got Transformers number 1. This is one that I actually associate with the discovery of a local comic store that I'd never gone to before called Magic Dragon Comics. They've been a great source for me as far as current comics that I might have missed out on, or the aforementioned variant covers, as they tend to order a lot and have a lot of different cover options compared to my regular comic store, which, shout out to Kamikaze, has done right by me for years. So those are kind of the 2 stores that I've become very acquainted with this past year. Going back to Transformers, this is one that in my time of collecting, I've never really seen in person that much, and it was one of their wall books. On top of all that, I think for a reasonable price of $40, I had to pull the trigger on this, as I'm a huge Transformers Generation 1 fan. There are a bunch of toys and figures just off camera that way. Oh, and wouldn't you know it, Bill Sienkiewicz is responsible for this cover as well. How could I forget to mention that? And there are a few other classic covers from this original Marvel Transformers series I'd like to track down. I think issue number 2 has Megatron and a black suit Spider-Man on there. There is a famous cover with Decepticon Shockwave, and I think the Dinobots. There's an issue with just featuring the Dinobots on the cover. Those are the ones I'd love to pick up. Down the road, no rush, but as I come across it at a good price, I'll probably snag those. So Transformers 1. Now, have I mentioned my love of X-Men? I'm not sure how much I've been able to gush about X-Men yet on this channel, but you'll probably be sick and tired by the end of it. So we have a bunch of X-Men books. I actually, truth be told, had a really hard time narrowing what X-Men books I wanted to share with you today, because we would have been here, an hour in, and I would still be sharing books with you. So these were the favorites of my bunch that I quickly identified. First up, we've got X-Factor number 6, featuring the first appearance of Apocalypse. And he's always been one of my favorite villains, along with Mr. Sinister. Honorable mention to that one, Uncanny X-Men 221, which I also did get. But the X-Men villains, fantastic. The original, cast of the X-Men in their early days here, facing off against a new threat. That's pretty much it. It's a villain I really like. Now you're probably wondering, why don't I just talk about Uncanny 221 and Mr. Sinister? Well, that's because I have another Uncanny X-Men book I wanted to share with you. And this was probably This might have been my biggest purchase from this past year. I got it as a bundle as I was able to negotiate down on eBay. We're talking about the first appearance of Gambit in Uncanny X-Men number 266. And you've got a Storm that's been de-aged to child form here as well. This is one that I wasn't sure if I was gonna go after. My own personal threshold for spending on any single comic was probably around $100 in my head. And this one, I think after, if you split up the cost over the bundle, was probably just over that amount. And this is a really nice copy. This is not a mid-grade. I would say this is probably I'm terrible with grading, but I think probably like a VF plus. Colors are great, not really any spine ticks. Definitely presents well. But our boy Gambit was one of the prominent X-Men at the time that I got in the book, which was Jim Lee's X-Men #1. He was prominently featured in the covers. He was prominently featured in the animated series. So getting the first appearances of important to me X-Men characters is on my long-term list. And I think it did pretty well this year. I got the first appearance of Jubilee as well. We talked about Cable, and apologies, I definitely misfiled Cable and New Mutants 87 separate from the X-Men. It's very much an X-Men character. We're almost near the end, guys. Next I want to talk about Wolverine #1, Wolverine's first ongoing series and first appearance of Patch, or his Patch persona. This is a iconic cover. This is it's pretty good. I would say, it's in that VF category, presents very well. Wolverine #1 shares the spot here with Wolverine #8. I got them together in a bundle of Wolverine books. I think I was lying to myself in how much I like the character of Wolverine. I mean, he definitely, was or is overexposed. He's everywhere, especially he was in Deadpool Wolverine movie this year. Back when I started collecting, you would throw Wolverine in a new title to kind of boost the sales a little bit. So there's a little bit of the contrarian at play here, but coming back into comics, I think I've embraced my love for this character, and when grouped with a great story and a great writer, just what a wonderful character he is. So Wolverine 1 and 8 over here. I know I wasn't really numbering these, but this is my #1 spot. Again, it's 2 books sharing, and you will see why. It is Days Future Past, all-time favorite Uncanny X-Men story, issues number 141 and 142. Now, besides my favorite X-Men story, I think the purchase of these 2 books really cements my internal commitment to collecting comics and getting back issues in particular, to not only own comics that are significant to my own comic journey, but ones that have, I think, historical significance too. And that might be, inflating this whole thing of comics in the bigger realm of things, but I can't stress enough like how good a story Days Future Past is, the whole post-apocalyptic thing, time travel, and just how many times this story and different permutations of this story have been revisited over the years. Not only in X-Men, but other properties as well have taken this idea of wanting to change this terrible feature and some character, an older version of character, usually time traveling in the past, to right some wrongs. Even if you've never read an X-Men comic book, I feel like you've come across this cover in some shape or form. But for the coming year, the portion of Uncanny X-Men that I really want to target is slowly but surely tracking down the different parts of the Dark Phoenix saga. Now the good news is I already have 2 of the parts of that story arc, but it can add up pretty quick. You got your first Dazzler there, the Hellfire Club, and a lot of really big issues. But I think as long as I am keeping out for good deals, good prices, we can make it happen. So guys, those were my favorite comic book pickups for 2024. Which ones were your favorites? What were some of your big pulls from this past year? I'd love to hear from you down in the comments below. But thank you guys so much for tuning in to the video today. I want to wish you guys a happy new year, a happy 2025. I'm so glad that I was able to provide a little recap for my 2024, and I look forward to what the new year has to bring for all of us. So take care, and I'll catch you in the next one. you.